Creating movement with a warping tremolo effect that speeds up and down, appearing and then disappearing. Hi, I'm Steve. Welcome back to the channel. Today we want to look at how I created the tremolo effect in my recent library, Metallurgic Alchemy. If you haven't heard, Metallurgic Alchemy is a library that I've released for free on PianoBook. PianoBook is this amazing community of samplists that share and create together. And it's a really wonderful place to be able to share your own creations, pick up a few tricks along the way, and enjoy the libraries that other people have created as well. Metallurgic Alchemy is a metallic drone library with the production techniques that I use embedded into the library's performance ability. If you're interested in it, you can download it. I will leave a link in the description. All you need to do is become a member of PianoBook, which is free, and then you can download it and many other libraries that are able to be used for free in your productions. It is honestly an amazing community, and I really encourage you to take part. Before I get going with showing you exactly how I made the tremolo effect in Metallurgic Alchemy, I want to make mention about the Kontakt sampler that I'm using. I am using Kontakt 6. A lot of the tools I'll be using are actually available in older versions of Kontakt. If you want your library to be as compatible as possible with as many versions as possible, try and use the earliest Kontakt that you have available. Something like 5.8, for example, means that people who have Kontakt 5 and can update to the latest version of that will be able to play your library, as well as people who have Kontakt 6. Kontakt 6 will do just fine though, so get creating, it doesn't matter. This is all about you creating your library. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is create a new instrument, at which point we're going to start building from the ground up some of the effects that I made. I'm running Kontakt inside Logic at the moment. That's not something you have to do. You can run it as a standalone app. I'm just running it inside Logic because it enables me to play some MIDI regions into the instrument to test it out. There's some benefits to this. Imagine if you are wanting to test your library, you could set up a MIDI region that plays every single note, and then you just hit play and let it do its thing. You can pay just attention to what you are creating. You don't have to worry about playing and listening at the same time. All right, so I've got it open up in Logic here. What I'm going to do is firstly create a brand new instrument. It's nice and simple, and I'm going to open up the tools to be able to take a look at what we've got going on here. At this point, we're going into the back end of Kontakt. This is where we're actually going to create our instrument. The first thing that you need to know is that Kontakt has different layers. So you have samples which are loaded into zones. Then you have those zones that are collected into groups, and those groups into instruments. Groups contain all of your samples mapped to the particular pitch and to the velocity. Inside each group might be a different articulation, it might be a different microphone signal, might be a different texture, might be a different effect. Groups can be used for a number of different things, and you can have multiple groups in a single instrument. Think of groups sort of like a subfolder. Essentially, it's a collection of all of the samples laid out on your keyboard, and it groups them all together, and you can apply individual effects. The tremolo effect that we're going to be creating, for example, is going to utilize this group topology. Okay, the first thing that I want to do is populate my library with some samples. So let's get that happening. If I click on the group editor and the map editor, I'm going to then be able to see my groups at the top, and then I can see my mapping region down the bottom. I want to be dragging my samples into here. Now, a great thing is that I have all of my samples labeled in a particular way. I've sampled every single note from C0 through to C4, and all of them are in order with this integer value rising. This is something that you can set up in Logic, for example. You can export with a number at the beginning of each region. So every region is labeled 1, 2, 3, and so on. This makes it super easy for me to be able to drag it into the sampler. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of these just with the Shift key, and then I'm going to drag it in. Now, as I drag it in, if I drag closer to the bottom, it'll start to put each of these sample files onto a single note. If I go up closer, it's going to try and spread those out. And I'm not really looking for that. I have a single sample per key that I want to go, and I want to start on C0. So if I just drag these in, you can see that as I raise up, each of those regions are getting slightly bigger. As I bring it down, it's going down. Now I need to find C0 there. Wonderful. All right, so if I deselect all of that and I click on a single one, you can see that this particular sample here matches up with this key, which is B0. If I look at the file name of this, it is B0. Fantastic. And I need to just double check that the root figure is B0. Essentially what this means is I've sampled B0, and because B0 is being played when B0 is pressed, the pitch will be in tune. That's what we want. If the root number is different from your file name, we've got some problems. The region can be spread out and we can play one sample across different pitches and it will tune it up and down. But as long as the root note is the same as the file name, you're on the right track. You're going to have an in-tune sample. Now I've got a single group containing all of my granular fiber samples. This is just one of the 3 textures that I had in Metallurgic Alchemy. So I'm going to relabel this one Gran Fiber, and I'm going to pop Trem there because we're going to be setting up the tremolo effect onto this group. All right. Now the way that we create the tremolo effect, this is where it gets a little bit interesting. What is a tremolo effect? Essentially, it is a change in amplitude. Essentially, it's going to be top volume and then no volume. So before we start applying the tremolo effect, let me explain what the intention behind this tremolo effect actually was. What I was aiming to do was to create a tremolo that could speed up and slow down and change the depth as well. So be really obvious versus disappear entirely so you can't hear any tremolo effect. That's what I was sort of looking for. I wanted to do that all with a single fader on my keyboard. As I slide up that fader, the tremolo effect starts to come in, the depth increases and the speed increases right to the top where it's at its deepest and fastest. And then I pull it back down to nothing again with the fader. There are different sections in here that you can add effects, and you would automatically think, let's just dive into there and add a tremolo effect. The thing is, as you go through it, you will find there is a surprising lack of tremolos. This isn't altogether surprising because we actually have a different way of creating the tremolo effect. Simple sort of concept, but a few steps involved to actually create this. So when we think about it, all tremolo is doing is it's affecting the volume with a wave signal. So this is where synthesis starts to cross over a little bit with sampling. We have similar controls. We have something called a modifier. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to modify the volume. We can modify this with a square wave, ergo creating a tremolo. If I go down here, I'm going to add a modulating source. I'm going to choose LFOs. LFOs are low frequency oscillators that create waveforms. And we're looking for well, they call it a rectangle rather than a square. So we're going to select the rectangle. So the rectangle LFO is now creating a change to the volume. Pretty slow at the moment. Now, one thing I'm going to tidy up while I'm actually here is this velocity section in here. Typically with sample libraries, the harder you hit a keyboard, the louder the sample is going to be. With Metallurgic Alchemy, I actually didn't want that to be an option because I was going to be controlling volume with another type of slider. More to come later, subscribe for that. So I actually don't need this one. I'm just going to delete this. All right, so what is this LFO doing? It's just controlling the volume, changing it up and down, but we need to change the speed because the speed isn't very fast at the moment. Now, all of these modifiers are actually located further down in the instrument. There is a little quick shortcut. If you click on this little icon here, it will jump you down and highlight the modulator that you're using and you're wanting to affect. The frequency here is set to 1 Hertz. That basically means 1 cycle every second. So I'm going to increase that. And there we have a little bit of a faster tremolo. Now what I actually want to do with this is I want to change the rate on the fly. The way that we do this is we need to set a modifier for this frequency. We're modifying the modifier, but don't panic, it's not as scary as it seems. There is a modifier button down here again, so we would click on that. It's going to be from an external source, a MIDI CC value. All of the controls on my keyboard can emit a control value, a continuous control value, which is MIDI CC. Those are a particular channel, and then the value of that slider is converted from a number between 0 and 127. So if I set the channel to 21, now the reason that I'm setting it to 21 is that Spitfire Audio use 21 for their vibrato setting. Vibrato, tremolo, close enough Trust me, ask Fender on that one. Look up Strat Tremolo effect. It's not a tremolo, it's a vibrato. But anyway, I thought it was just made the most sense. Plus I also had that control on my keyboard already ready to go. It made sense. Now when I control and I move my MIDI control 21, it's creating a change. That is perfect. That is exactly what I need. I want to be able to create that change over time. So now I've got that working, but I haven't got the depth working. Now this is where it gets a little bit complicated because there is a little bit of a workaround that I had to find in order to make this work. Up here at the top, there is an intensity. How intense do you want this effect or modulator to be on the group? So as I drag this down, you'll notice it will disappear. Great, that sounds like exactly what I want, except when I try and right click and learn MIDI CC automation, the thing about the right click learn MIDI CC is it only works on that one knob. With Metalogic Alchemy, I had 3 groups and I wanted to be able to put this tremolo effect on all 3 groups, not just a single group. That meant that this sort of method, while it gets me by for this group, wasn't going to be enough for this library. So I use my groups as a way of working around this challenge. What I'm actually going to do is now create a second group, and I'm going to leave that without the tremolo effect and create a blend between the two. That blend will still be using 21, so it's still one fader controlling the blend between the tremolo effect and the non-tremolo effect, plus the speed of that tremolo effect, but I'm going to be blending it between 2 groups. Now I could just duplicate this group, and there we have a single group and another group. They're both referencing the same samples because it is the same sound that I need, so that's not a problem. The thing is, I'm going to need to remove the LFO from a single group. What I want to do first of all though is turn off edit all groups. I don't know why Kontakt has this set as a default, but if you leave that on, whatever you do to this group, you're going to do to the other group. So let's turn that off to avoid stuffing anything up. All right, so I'm going to just change this second group to without trem, so it's just granular fiber. Now what I'm going to do to begin with is I'm just going to go group solo. So that means it's only playing the group that I have selected. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here with my edit all groups off. I'm going to come down here into the gran fiber group, non-trem. I'm going to select this and I'm just going to delete it. Now when I play it should have nothing. But over here on this grand fiber trem, we're good to go. Now have our 2 groups. One's got a tremolo effect, one doesn't. How do we create a blend between the 2? The way that this works is actually quite simple, but you have to set up on both groups. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to add another modulator, and I'm going to choose an external source MIDI CC, because as I said, I want my MIDI CC 21 to control both the frequency and the blend, the depth between the 2. So I'm going to set it to the same MIDI CC value. That's the great thing about it. You can do this on multiple groups. You can't learn automation on the same control on multiple groups, but you can set up MIDI CC as a modulator in multiple places and reuse that same channel. So it was perfect for this example. All right, so I've set up MIDI CC. Now, as I turn up MIDI CC and turn down MIDI CC, this group will fade in and fade out. So let's have a look at that. This is on the granular fiber trem. So nothing is playing there until I start sliding it up. So we have half of it working. Now we've got the tremolo blending in as we come in and speeding up at the same time. Right, let's now come over to our standard non-tremolo group. I'm going to come down here, I'm going to add the same modulator. So external source, MIDI CC, I'm going to set it to 21. This time I'm going to invert it. So it's going to do the opposite, 100% volume when the slider is all the way down and 0 volume at the top. So let's now play. We've still got group solo on, so I'm only going to hear this particular group for now. We should hear it disappear. Completely gone there, and here it comes back. Let's turn off group solo and hear those 2 blending together. How nice is that? Now we have the tremolo effect starting to take shape. There are some other things that you can do to just kind of manually finesse it, as I like to say. Down here on each MIDI CC channel, you have a modulation shaper. When you open this up and activate it, you have a single linear line, and this means that as the control changes, it changes linearly. I could set this a little bit differently so that, let's say if I group solo this, right now if we play it and we change it, it goes out evenly. But let's drag this down like this. It wasn't until I got to the very end of the slider that that actually changed. So I want it to fade out a little bit quickly. I don't want it to be around too much because I want to be able to hear that tremolo effect come in. So let's now turn off the group solo and hear it with this effect at play. Nice, not too bad. I do need to come over to the tremolo effect and do a similar sort of shaping here, just to help smooth those two together. But I can play around with that until I've got it just right, just the way that I'd like. There you go. So that is how I created the tremolo effect in Metallurgic Alchemy. So if you'd like to check out that library more and play around with it, perhaps put it into your productions, jump down to the link in the description to download it now from the Piano Book community. As I said, a fantastic community, and it would be wonderful if you took part. If you'd like to take part, I'm going to be doing a whole series of videos on how I created this library, which might help you create your library. I will be releasing more libraries. I'm working on one at the moment, and as I go, I am coming across new challenges, discovering new things that I will be sharing with you. So if this is the sort of thing that interests you, definitely subscribe to this channel. A like would be amazing. I'll catch you next time.